Okay, so welcome to my panelists and also to all of the attendees watching today. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you here. And you can see on the screen some upcoming dates that we have for future panels. Today is week 2, and we are featuring public librarians. We're doing this every other Wednesday, and we will on September 23rd, be featuring special librarians. And for that, we've got librarians from HGA Architects, the Amherst Wilder Foundation, and General Mills, who will be featured on the panel. And then October 7th, we're featuring school librarians, and I have one each from a middle and elementary and a high school. And then government librarians and archivists will be the weeks following after that. And we also actually have scheduled through the beginning of February. So we have a lot of these panels that will be coming. So I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope you're learning a lot, and I hope you'll come back and tell your friends. So you will also see on the title card that's on the screen a link to the evaluation. I will be sending that out to all of our attendees as well, so you will get that, but feel free to copy that down if you would like to fill out the evaluation at the end. And meanwhile, we are just going to be having a conversation with our fabulous panelists. For those of you watching, please ask questions. This is for you. I want you to learn what you want to know. So don't hesitate to use the chat function or the Q&A function to ask questions of our panelists. But with that, I think we will begin if everyone is ready. So make sure I've got the questions ready. So we're going to start. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves to our audience. Tell us what your current job title is, where it is that you work, and where you went to school, and then give us kind of a brief summary of the path you took to get to your current role. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Laura.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Laura Morlock. I am currently an adult services librarian in Dakota County Library System at the Westcott branch, and that's in Eagan. I'm hearing a little feedback. Is that okay?
I'm not hearing it at all, Laura.
All right, perfect. It's a little distracting, sorry. And I just wanted to say, so my background is I have a 2-dimensional art minor with an English major from St. Catherine University. That is also where I went to get my MLIS degree. And that's in St. Paul here. And let's see here, focused on liberal arts. I wanted to be a children's author, illustrator, or art librarian. So that's kind of how I ended up getting into the library world. And I went through sales, display. I was an office manager for the library science program. I worked in the university faculty recruitment contracts office, and I did tons of volunteering and service work, and committee work. So that's the quick bio.
That's great, Laura. Thank you. Rosalind.
My name is Rosalind Hope, and I'm the outreach librarian at the Anoka County Library System. I just achieved rule of 90, so that shows you how long I've been there. That's 32 years plus 58 years of age. So I've been working for Anoka for a long time. But prior to being an outreach, yeah, I know, just I know. But I got my master's degree from University of Wisconsin, Madison in 1985. I decided to be a librarian when I was 4 because I loved Story Hour with Mrs. Nelson. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it really is what I decided to do. So I finished my undergrad in 3.5 years so I could get straight to master's as fast as possible. And so I did an undergrad in history at Eau Claire, went to graduate school at Madison. Then I decided I needed a break, so I did a work exchange program in London for 6 months and worked in a bookstore on Charing Cross Road. And then I worked at Waukesha Public Library. And then I came to the Twin Cities and worked at Anoka Public. And Anoka Public merged with Anoka County in 1995, and I've been there since then. Most of the time I was a children's librarian, but in 2016 I took over as outreach on an interim basis, loved it, and that's what I do now. Mostly I manage books by mail. That's my main concern at the moment. That's it.
That's great, Rosalind. Thank you. And Lisa.
Hi everybody, I'm Lisa Howes from the Southdale Library in Hennepin County, and I am one of the youth services librarians there. And I like to say that my journey to being a librarian started in 8th grade when I took that occupational test and it came up as librarian. And I said, no way am I ever going to be the lady stamping books, because I'm always the one being told to be quiet. And then, life goes on. I grew up on the East Coast, so I went to school at UConn and spent a lot of time in the library. Told him to be quiet in the library every time. And then worked for National Geographic for a couple of years. And when I took a tour of the library downtown, and it finally clicked that this is what a librarian does, I signed up for library school the next day. And I went to Catholic for a short time, and then we moved out here in the middle of a semester, so I quick transferred to St. Kate's and subbed a lot while my kids were small, and so tried lots of different libraries, and then settled with youth services, which has been amazing. I love it. It fits me perfectly. So working with kids and families, my jam. And that's it.
That is fabulous. Thank you all so much. Okay. So the next question is one of my favorites on the list. Pretend that you're speaking with someone who's never heard of libraries before. Now, describe your job. And let's start with Rosalind.
Well, what I would say is, do you like to read? Do you like to watch movies? Do you have a computer at home? Do you have access to the internet? You don't? Well, then the public library is the place for you to go. When you get there, you just get this free library card. It's easy, and then you can check out books, DVDs. You can go on the computers. And what's great is, since if you can't get out, if you're stuck at home, I can mail books and DVDs to you, and it's all free, including postage. That's what I would say.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
Well, she said all the things I wanted to say. So my job is getting kids excited about books and reading, especially those who think they are not readers, and really teaching families about what's available to them for free. I feel like call myself sometimes the carnival barker, trying to rope people in. Come on, you guys, come on in here. You know you want it. It's free. So anywhere I go, really, feel like it's my job to tell people about what their tax dollars are paying for and encourage them to use it as much as possible. Cheerfully.
With a smile. And Laura. Laura, you're still muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was trying not to be distracting, and then I did. So I'm going to read a little bit of my notes that trying to think about this. A library is a place where people come to find information and resources. And so my job as a librarian is to assist people connecting to that information, whether it be physical, so actual books, large print, paperback, trade, graphic, children's, teens, or with a computer for downloading, for printing, faxing, finding an image, resume help, digital, how to use an ebook, audiobook collection, online research, or references, resources, directional, where are your new books? How do I print off something from my phone? Factual, is it in a reference interview setting where they need to research something, or reader's advisory where they want to find a book like another book that they're reading and love, or in a program with presenters, art classes, music, teaching, technology, or in a book group setting. Of course, all of this has changed during the pandemic, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, but this is what it had been before. We also at my library have an iLab, so we have a lot of technology classes that we get to do. I used to teach sewing. And then I talked to two of my other colleagues about this particular question, and one of them said she literally got a question yesterday from a dad who brought his two boys over, and they said they wanted to ask the person at the desk, what does a librarian do? And she said 3 things. And she said, basically, I help people find information, I work with the books in the collection, so I take them out when they're dirty or when they need to be replaced and put them out in the right spot so you can find them. And then I also do programs because, you know, she used to do the story time and all of those programs for kids. My other colleague basically said almost the same thing as I did about helping people find books, resources, and then she really did use that word free. It's free resources in the library, in this particular building, online also.
Those are all great explanations. Like, I feel like what a great advertisement for the public library system as a whole, right? Okay, so for those listening, why don't we tell them what's a typical day like for each of you? So, and maybe there is no such thing as a typical day. Maybe it's an atypical day. So what is the nitty gritty? What do you do on a daily basis? Lisa.
Well, I usually, because I work at a bigger library, I usually spend about 2 hours on the reference desk. And at Southdale, we have 2 different levels. So on the second floor is the popular library. So it's most of the kids' stuff, all the fiction, teen area. So that's my typical place to be. But a typical day, boy, it's been months. So it's a couple hours on the desk, a lot of planning. I have a colleague who I work with really closely to plan a lot of our programs. We share a lot. So planning story times. If it's summer, it's a lot of running around, getting things ready for whatever might be planned for that day. Working with teen volunteers on a daily basis. So they come in, and so I watch over them, make sure that they know what they're doing and following directions, and working with the collection a bit here and there. I'm trying to think, what else did I write down in my list? Yeah, summer is like the busy time, especially at the public library, because it's a place to be.
Great, thank you. And Rosalind?
So, like I mentioned, I'm the outreach librarian, and my main focus is books by mail. And that are just, we mail books and DVDs to people who are homebound. And I like to say people who are homebound before the pandemic, because everybody was homebound for quite a while there. But so, typical day, I currently help about 240 people. I'm kind of their personal librarian. So when I begin the day, I check my mail, I check my phone messages to see what requests have come in. And then I log those into my requests list, and I start filling requests as fast as I can. Excel is my friend. I never thought I could do this job from home, but because of the pandemic, I figured out a way to do it. So I have an online inventory of stuff that's ready to go out, and I know what it is because I have it in my spreadsheet. So I can do everything from home with the help of my great LSA, Nicole, who sends everything out. At a certain time every day, once delivery is done, that's when all the requests start pouring in. So that's what I was asking you about, if you could hear my computer beeping, because I could hear the requests coming in. Because what happens is delivery comes in, all the books by mail bags are returned, and then we see who sent things back and what they want next. And so Nicole sends pictures of all of those request slips to me, and I can fill them. And then also I get between 60 and 70 holds come in every day for me, you know, books, DVDs, audiobooks that my patrons want. So I check all those in, and then I prepare a mailing, and I try to get that done before Nicole has her scheduled books by mail time, and then she pulls everything and gets them out. That's kind of how it works. It's just constant keeping up with my patrons. They're reading faster and more furiously than ever because this isolation lockdown has been really hard on the elderly, and that's who most of my patrons are. The other thing I do is I keep my books by mail favorites spreadsheet up to date. I signed up for like over 240 author alerts with my Hennepin County library card. because between Hennepin County, Fantastic Fiction, and Amazon, I think those are the three, I know Amazon, but those are the three best ways to keep track of what the newest book is by an author. And so Hennepin County might send me an alert. This author has a book. I can update my spreadsheet, and in this spreadsheet, I keep track of patrons by format. So I know which patron loves Louise Penny and which ones need it in large print, audio, or regular print. So I constantly keep up with that because that way they get new stuff just as fast as everybody else. So it's really a lot of reader's advisory and just being a personal librarian for 240 people. That's a day.
That was great. Laura?
I was just blown away by that because I also do books by mail and home library services for part of my job, but I only have 13 people, but 13 felt like a lot to me.
Yeah.
So I am just like, wow. So a normal day is not a normal day here. It's all over the place again, but I tried to break it down so that it kind of made sense. So right now we are doing more reference desks, so about 3 hours a day. We're also doing what we call iLab shifts because we're in the iLab, but we're not necessarily having that space open right now for people to come in. What we're doing from that space is any computer help, printing help, faxing, scanning needs that people coming into the library for their up to 1 hour at a computer, the person in the iLab, they're the ones who are called on to help out with that. So that's about 3 hours doing that too per day. And then the rest of the time, which is very little, but which has to be spread out like thin, you know, what's that saying? You feel like your butter spread over too little bread. Committee work, meetings, the books by mail, the home library services, collection management, going out there weeding, even though we're not wanting to weed too much right now. Things, email, displays, all of those other things, and then collaborations with my colleagues, and then weekly meetings that we check up on everything that's happening in the library. So that's kind of a typical day where it's busy like that. It used to be that maybe 3-4 hours a day, I would spend that doing programming, planning, leading programs, setting up, cleaning up, preparing, ordering for that. That is not happening right now. So my job has kind of flipped. And during the pandemic, beginning of it, there was a lot more answering phones nonstop, helping with curbside pickup, scheduling it, packaging the bags. In summertime, we all chipped in and helped out, even though I'm not a youth services librarian, we all chipped in and helped each other out. So it's kind of being flexible and just jumping in and helping out all over the board.
Sounds like you guys all wear a lot of different hats in your jobs. We actually have a question in the chat for Lisa. Catherine Lewis says, Lisa, she has similar goals in wanting to help kids who think they aren't readers. Did you ever consider becoming a school librarian? And if so, what made you decide to go to the public route instead?
I did think about it until I realized it would be that much more schooling. And having friends who are school librarians, I know that not oftentimes, but sometimes they're the first to go when there are budget cuts. So I didn't want to be in a position where I didn't have that kind of job security, I guess. And I also, honestly, I don't know how I would deal with parents in a school setting. I took a class about being a teacher, and after the one class, I was like, yeah, I don't think that's for me. So those were my reasons. I thought about it a lot because I thought, man, summer's off. But I think you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of the different kinds of positions. I admire school librarians. They have a job.
Agreed. Rosalind or Laura, do either of you have anything to add to that question?
I would say what Lisa said. I was a children's librarian for like 30 years, and the problem is it's the lack of security. I think, again, I don't know, you just see those positions get cut. You see them becoming part-time at one school library. So that is what scared me off, unfortunately.
And the only thing I could add is that I do have a colleague whose desk is right over there who did make that transition from school libraries into the public library setting. So it can be done. And she did that for many, many years, and she didn't get cut. She made the decision that this was the time to switch, and she loves the work she does here. So
I think those are all.
Yeah.
Please, Laura.
I was just going to say she loved being a school librarian, though, like loved it. So except for the politics later on and all of the, cutting of jobs and things like that. So, but she loved it.
I think those are good. I hope we answered your question, Catherine. And I would just say to you, Catherine, on October 7th, we're going to have a panel of school librarians. So maybe come back and ask that question again and see what different responses you get from them, because they all clearly decided to go that route. And I see we have, Catherine is looking forward to it. That's great. We also have a question from Maggie in the chat who says she's an MLIS student right now, and she's curious about her cohort's prospects for public library jobs in the next 5 years. Has the pandemic changed how your libraries are hiring? Anyone want to tackle that?
Yes, it has changed. They're not hiring.
Yep.
Right now, unfortunately, and I have a feeling it's going to be a tough year ahead with the economy. So everything is, we are desperate for help at Anoka County, and we can't replace positions that have been unfilled since the pandemic started, and we don't even have our shelvers back yet. So
Wow.
It's been tough, and please God, let there be a vaccine before the next 5 years comes up. But until that happens, and even after that, it's going to depend on, I think, how long it takes for the economy, and when it comes to local government to settle down. And I think we're looking for a tough time ahead.
Same for Dakota County. We are in a hiring freeze right now. So they are not hiring new positions, and people are leaving some positions or retiring, and either they're hiring internally if they've received permission to do that, or they're just waiting. So, yeah.
But I would say, to give you some hope, it's just so weird right now that who knows, I wouldn't base what's happening now. If we're never going to have a vaccine, yes, I would base what's happening now for the future. But hopefully, once the vaccine arrives and things settle down, things will go back to normal a little bit more.
And I'll echo what you just said, and then what Sharon just commented, that yes, there are a lot of retirements. So hopefully this thing will be over soon, and in that case, there will be spots open. Just gotta wait, I guess. I don't know. Everything is so up in the air.
And also in the chat, Cammie Anderson, who is a Metronet employee, is putting in a shameless plug for the Metronet job line. And she did link to it in the chat. And I will say that, having looked at it recently, shockingly full of school library jobs right now. So, maybe consider something else, because schools do appear to be hiring at the moment. And I'm also seeing Anoka is hiring, apparently, a library, an LSA.
They're hiring some LSAs, yes.
Yeah.
But those positions have been vacant for over a year. So it's to the point where we can't be open anymore if we don't hire somebody, so. Thank heavens for that, I will say. And the shelvers are coming back, I do believe, but it just takes a while. So.
Yeah, everything I think is strange at the moment. So.
Right, but I know there's a librarian job that's been vacant since last February. So, I don't know when that's going to get filled. So.
Cammie says there's also a library page job in Ramsey County. So there is a little bit out there at the moment, but it looks like at the moment the long-term prospects are not great. So keep that in mind. Let's keep going with the questions. So let's do, what is the best and what is the worst thing about your job? Laura, you're nodding along. You've got an answer for me.
My answer is funny because it's the same answer for the best and the worst. Can you guess what it is? It's the people. I love the people I work with, and I love the people that I serve at the desk. But sometimes you do have quirky patrons who come in who just make you wish you were not there that day. But you know, overall, I love that. That's the best and the worst. I mean, and later on we get to share a little story. So I've got some great stories to share for that. Let's see here. Also, the colleagues that I work with, being, we are a really strong, tight-knit team, and I feel like that helps us get through everything here, because if you have a strong support system and good people that you're working with, you can get through anything. So that's the best thing for me, and the fun patrons.
Laura? Lisa, best and worst?
I think the best is really, I love working with teens. I know they freak a lot of people out, but I dig them. And, you know, having me as my volunteers, you know, you get to know them and they talk with you, and you learn about their lives and their dreams, and you do your best to encourage and support them, and of course give them the free resources that we have to push them along. And then, you know, they come back later and tell you all their adventures and all the things they've been up to. I just love it. And again, on the flip side, there's always the teens that don't want anything to do with me. I can't imagine why. So that can also be equally frustrating. And yeah, so I think it's pretty much the same. And sometimes with me, the worst part of my job is some of the super detailed stuff. You know, sometimes I might let a couple things go.
Thank you, Roseland.
For me, the best thing about Books by Mail outreach is my relationships with older people. Like, I've never had this many friends in their 90s before. So, and what's really sweet is, you know, they still write in cursive. So thank heavens I can read cursive, but they will write me a letter asking something, because I have a couple patrons who type on Post-its because their hands are so arthritic they can't write. And so I will write them a letter back. And I always, everything I send them back is in 20 type font so that it's big enough, you know, and so I'll send them a letter back, and then they think that we're corresponding, I think. And so they send me a letter back, and then I mean, it's just really, and it becomes kind of like 84 Charing Cross Road, where you just have this. And so one of my patrons, George, who's my favorite, we have this great relationship, and he was super worried about my daughter going to school in New York, and was thrilled that she went to school at UW-Madison instead, because he was so worried about the big city. And it got into that kind of detail. And then on the other side, you know, and then George, I'd never met him. I just was writing back and forth. And one day he said he didn't want me to send him any more books, so I didn't. And whenever that happens with my job, it usually means somebody is sick. So I was worried, and 6 months later, he came into the building, and I got paged, and I went out to the desk, and I met him, and he just said, "I lost her," and I knew that his wife had died. And so I took him by the hand, because he started to cry, and we went back into the break room, and I gave him a big hug, and we talked. And I mean, this is a relationship just built up over letters, you know? And we had that kind of relationship where he felt comfortable, and he told me about his wife and how they met, you know, and their family in the 1950s, and just what an amazing job where you get to meet these people, but you don't actually meet them. And so when you do feel like you're their friend. Another woman emailed me at 3:30 a.m. saying that her sister had just died of COVID, and she wanted to let me know because I was her lifeline with books.
Aww.
So it's that kind of thing is amazing with this job. And so, of course, then the worst thing, and the lifeline angle, it makes me cry, the number of notes and emails I've gotten since COVID for people who are just so grateful for books by mail. Because my job has not ended. It's gotten more busy because of this pandemic. And then unfortunately, the worst part is my favorite patrons die. So that's kind of how, I mean, sometimes they move, but usually because they die. So, and then we have the heartbreaking children coming in to let me know, and then we're all standing there crying. So, but what I like is you learn intimate details about people that their kids might not even know, you know, their reading tastes, their reading likes and dislikes. And it's a cool little intimate relationship that's very, very specific. And I could also give their kids gift suggestions if I ever wanted to, you know, branch out. But anyway, that's what I like the best.
Thank you for sharing those stories, Rosalind. Well, what I heard from that, all of you said people. So I think that's a good note for those listening. If you are not a people person, maybe public librarianship is not the role for you.
That is very true.
Yes.
So good to know. Okay, so let's talk about the basics of a public library job. Minimum qualifications, starting salary, things like that. Rosalind, what's it like in Anoka County?
Okay, so Anoka County often does not require the masters, but then they turn around and only hire people with masters, which is crazy. But so you need a master's degree, but they somehow work the system so that they can hire people without one. And that's unfortunate. I wish they would be more firm about requiring it and then actually hiring people who have it if they actually feel like it's a requirement. But so that's my little soapbox. But I haven't interviewed for a job. I mean, I interviewed for this job in 2017, but they just took me at my salary. So when Anoka Public merged with Anoka County in 1995, they took me at they had to grandfather me in at my managing salary. So I get paid a little bit more. So I think the starting salary was like $50,000. But like I said, I get paid more than that. But to give you some perspective, when I started working in 1986 in Waukesha, I was making $17,000 a year, and I worked for Domino's Pizza in order to pay the bills. So I guess, yeah, so I'm not as knowledgeable as I should be because I haven't been out there as much, thankfully.
Great, thank you. Laura?
Here in Dakota County, it is an MLIS degree, and I even found the description. So I was just writing down a few of the different things. So like you usually have to have previous library experience in certain areas. You know, so like either if they're looking for adult services or whatever, you know, you'll need reference or outreach or readers advisory services experience, and then experience providing sorry, I just said that, reference, readers advisory, outreach to diverse patrons, electronic reference services, project management, program development, and leadership skills. And the range was roughly like 40 to 55,000. Sorry. We're closing.
Thank you.
It's going to be a couple more of those.
That was great.
Sorry, that was it for me.
Okay, thanks, Laura.
Nicely timed.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, so I think it's real similar. To be a librarian, you do need your master's in library science. But there's an associate library position that does not, and you can do similar things. So it's, you can help with programming and planning and things like that, but it's just slightly different. I did have to look up the starting salary. So right now for librarians, it's $53,000 at Hennepin. I don't know how we rate anymore among the metropolitan libraries, but it used to be that we were not the highest. I have a feeling we're still there. But yeah, similar, you working with diverse patrons. I don't think that you need a ton of experience, but it helps. I'm trying to look at their website because honestly, I don't know, but it does list it on the county website.
Okay. And Laura, did you say the starting salary in Dakota and I missed it because of the announcement?
I said 40 to 55,000 for like the range.
Okay.
I don't know for all of the positions, but yeah.
Sure. And that is fine, just to give an idea.
Yeah.
So, and we kind of talked a little, I think this ties in. What's the hiring process for these jobs? So let's start with Lisa.
Interview and interview and interview. And don't give up. I had so many interviews.
Me too.
I was lucky when I graduated from St. Kate's that I got the sub job right away, which was wonderful because I got to try out all of the libraries and get to know the people and the managers and policy and get a feel for the different buildings too. So when I was interviewing for permanent spots, I knew where I wanted to be and had more of a clue. It's like doing your research. And then you can, you have great references if you work really hard and ask so many questions. And but no, I interviewed a lot to get the full-time position. And you just learn from previous experience.
I
Is
agree.
that what you're looking for?
Oh, that's perfect.
Persistence.
It's good for them, I think, to hear that it's not that you walk out of library school and then boom, you get a job, because I don't think it works that way for anyone. So, Rosalind?
Yes, I would say it's a government job working for a public library. So you're going to probably apply through the government website. So it's not as important to have a fancy resume because they're going to make you do it all over again anyway when you apply from the county website. And then you just begin the interview process. With this job, it was pretty straightforward. But I think that's because I was doing it on an interim basis. And so the interview wasn't quite as strenuous. I just interviewed and got it, but I'd already done it for a year. So, and like I said, the last time I interviewed was in 1988. So I'm not a great candidate to speak to that. But I think the main thing is have your resume figured out, but realize that you're going to be going through a government website. And be prepared for that panel of interviewees who don't smile. So,
yes,
who are very neutral.
Good point, especially about the government website.
yes, that's a big thing.
And Laura?
I was going to say, for me, it did take years, like years. And I worked on different committees. I volunteered. I did internships. I did everything that I could while I couldn't get a job. And then when it happens, it just happened. So like I literally went through my whole chronology for it. It took 2 months from when I applied to like hearing about when the interview date was, having the interview, and then being accepted, and then having the tour, literally 2 months. And then I was in the job, and it was so fast. I just couldn't believe it. But before that, it was years of trying, applying, interviewing, getting close, and, you know, being the second so many times. And then, but this is my dream job. I love it. So I was like, it was worth it. It was worth it. I love it. I love the people I work with. I love being here. I love the work that I get to do. I want to go back to programming, but that's okay.
Eventually.
Yes, eventually.
What I heard from you, Laura, and you, Lisa, is volunteering, subbing, getting connections to the community before would definitely benefit you long term.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, subbing is huge.
Yeah.
Say yes to everything.
But
Yep.
unfortunately, Anoka County Library fired their subs, so we don't know anymore.
Wow.
But don't get me started on that.
Wow. I was going to say 2 of my colleagues did years of subbing also before they got their jobs here. So
It's a great way to get
Yep.
your foot in the door.
Yep.
Yes, I agree. Okay. So is there a specialized skill set that is needed for your job outside of what we would call library skills? And if so, did you have this specialized skill set before getting this job, or did you learn it on the job? And are there special degrees or licenses that are needed to do this job? Laura.
Yeah. It's kind of the same answers. I was looking over my notes here. Basically, MLIS degree is standard for my job. And then they were wanting to make sure, you know, can you work with diverse populations or diverse patrons, especially now? Have you done outreach? Have you developed a program? Have you done project management? And I did have experience with all of those different things, but I feel like it changed when I got into the public library setting, and I learned different ways of doing it and different ways of connecting with the community. I'm trying to think of an example and blanking on it right now, but like, for example, with the homebound patrons or the senior centers that I work with, I didn't specifically target those, the age groups before, but my current job does. So I do that work now, and I specifically try to adjust my work to do that. So I do think you do learn things on the job, and yes, it is so important to be flexible and to adapt, and just, I say this for a lot of things, just take it with a sense of humor and just laugh and let it go and just try.
Great. Rosalind?
I'd say, I mean, I've mentioned this before, but you really have to love readers advisory to do my job. I mean, you just have to love it. You can't be afraid of it. You can't have the deer in the headlights look when someone comes up and asks you for a book suggestion. So that is really, I mean, you know, if you're a people person and like to talk on the phone with older people and, you know, can speak loudly on occasion, that helps. But the main thing is just really be able to do readers advisory. And for me, that just comes with time and over years. So read widely, I would say.
That's a great answer. Lisa?
Well, for youth services, obviously have to be comfortable working with kids and teens and families. You can't, well, I guess you could be super shy, but that might hurt you because you need to throw yourself out there a lot, whether it's visiting a school and trying not to bore the kids to tears talking about library resources, you know, making it slightly entertaining for them. All the different outreach, like go to like open streets or whatever, you got to be out there and ready to talk to people. It can be exhausting. You got to know how to tell a story. So watching people who are good storytellers, it doesn't have to be your own story, but how to make kids excited about the book that you're reading with them. And for me, since I work with babies through teens, you know, working with teens, you got to know some knowledge of child development is really helpful. So you can try to understand and remember what it was like to be that age and understand where they are mentally and physically. And a lot of knowledge of the kid and YA literature. Like you said, Reader's Advisory is a big part. Families will come to you and be like, you like The Lightning Thief, help me. That's all they'll read. So knowledge is key.
Great. I think that's really helpful to know that, you know, there are skills that some you will develop on the job, but coming in with a little basis can certainly benefit you in the long term. Are there professional organizations for your job, and do you belong to them? If so, what benefit do you think this adds to your job? Lisa.
I don't belong to anything.
That's okay.
Me either.
Why not?
Don't tell anybody. So I have presented at a conference, but I never actually joined YALSA. But I know that there are many, many that you could sign up for. One organization that Hennepin County belongs to is, I had to write this down, Minnesota Youth Intervention Programs Association, which is YIPA, which offers some really cool trainings, you know, dealing with teens and social and emotional development and what's going on in the world and how you can help them. And not everything is applicable to what I do, but it's great to know that I can sign up for any of those webinars if I want to, or used to be in person, but for now, webinars.
Okay. Laura?
I was gonna say, can you see this right there, or is it backwards?
No, that's
we
right.
can see it.
Okay, so for a different presentation I did, I was laughing because the library world is totally full of acronyms, and this was my world for a bit before. So basically I did, let me see, which was the first one? MLA, Minnesota Library Association, definitely was a member. I need to rejoin. And and
I'm not alone.
and part of that, I really was on so many different committees. Like I worked on the conference planning, I worked on the 125th celebration, I worked on the nominations committee, I was on the board as the secretary. Part of MLA also helped me get into MILE, which is the Leadership, Minnesota Institute for Leadership. Oh my goodness, I'm totally...
The library will be closing.
Sorry for closing again. Leadership Excellence. Sorry. So that MILE Leadership Excellence was a part of that cohort, which was excellent, really learned a lot, got a mentor who was the former state librarian, networked, learned about StrengthsFinder, and then because of that, the opportunity arose for American Library Association being part of the Emerging Leaders group. And so in 2012, I was one of the emerging leaders. I got to go to ALA in Anaheim and Chicago and then Dallas for a different one. And that was an amazing experience to actually go to one of those conferences where it is so incredibly big that you're taking city buses to get to some of the locations. And just to see all of the people out there, I was really, like I said before, wanting to go the route of art librarianship. So I was part of ARLIS and the North American Twin Cities group here. And so we would meet, we would network, we would do book talks together on art books. We would go on field trips to the different art libraries around the cities. And that was huge because, you know, you might not know where some of these art libraries are. So if you're interested in art, I would do that. Part of the Emerging Leaders program that I was part of, I was with the CALA group, C-A-L-A, and that's the Chinese American Library Association. I am half Chinese, and so I wanted to see what is Chinese librarianship about. And so I was totally immersed in this group of people who are focused on CALA, and I can't even remember how long it's been around, but it's been around a long time. And our project was to interview the different leaders in CALA and then to share different quotes about leadership from them in a celebration. Part of being part of CALA is the Joint Conference for Librarians of Color. So that one I would highly recommend if you're of a diverse background, or if you're just curious and want to be more well-rounded that way. They only meet ever so often. They're trying to do it more often, but maybe with the pandemic now they've had to delay that. But Joint Conference for Librarians of Color, JCLC. I think those were all of my different groups. But I really, like I said before, I was not getting those jobs. So I joined all these committees, I volunteered, I just went out there and I went that way. And it really did help me get a bigger picture of the library world, the library community, and really networking and getting my name out there and getting to meet other people. So I'd recommend it.
I feel like you should get a gold star for that answer.
I'm gonna pass. No, well, I mean, MLA, of course, Minnesota Library Association, but Readers Advisory Roundtable is another one, RART. In Anoka, we have SIN meetings, which is Senior Issues Network, which I enjoy that. And then one of the leaders for outreach is David Kelsey from the St. Charles Public Library in Illinois. And he, I think he's the president of the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services. If he's not now, he was. But anyway, that's another possibility. I'm not great at joining or, you know, maintaining my membership, but I think the conferences are really valuable.
Thank you. And in the comments, Megan McElroy is asking, when did you join these associations, in library school or once you were employed? And I'm just going to say, Megan, you should absolutely join while you are in library school because A, it's cheaper if you join while you are a student, and B, it'll give you a lot of connections that will help you get a job and, like Laura said, help you really kind of understand the library community and the library world, so it can be definitely beneficial. Did all of you join most of these things when you were in library school? No, yes. Lisa did not. Lisa hasn't joined any, really. So. But I will say, Lisa, even though you're not a member of a national, or you do join committees, you do join groups, you are a connector. I know this because I've seen you at many different groups and things like that.
I do the things.
You do the things. So even if it's not an official association, you are joining something.
Yes.
So, and I think that's kind of the takeaway here is get involved. Have some connection.
That's what I said. Just keep saying yes. Just say yes.
And I forgot to mention one more, in case you are more interested in technology or being very current, the McAllister Library Technology Conference is one to be a part of too.
Yes.
So yeah.
And register early. It sells out every year.
Yes. Yes.
I think
so
what
popular.
Lisa said is really true about saying yes, because like I've done readers advisory workshops for PLD Day and things like that. So just, you know, just like saying yes today as far as that goes.
Yeah, true enough. Okay, great. So are there opportunities for continued training and professional development for your jobs, and what kinds of trainings? And let's start with Rosalind this time.
Okay, so since I work with elderly people mostly, I would say one good organization is, one good conference every year is the Leading Age Minnesota Institute and Expo. It's every February at the River Center in St. Paul. And there's lots of senior expos too. Anoka County has one, at least two that I try to go to. Novelist trainings are really good as for just beefing up your reader's advisory skills. And if you're not familiar with Novelist, it's a reader's advisory database that most, I think, all the MELSA systems subscribe to it, so you could explore it through your library website. And this particular year, the National Library of Medicine has had some specific COVID training webinars with regard to COVID and isolation and older adults that have been helpful.
Great. Lisa?
Tons and tons of training. So the Hennepin County is really good about keeping us up to date on tech, offering things for diversity and inclusion, or at least advertising if there's something available through a different organization. I know I traveled over to St. Paul in the before times to do a lot of in-person learning from folks who are from different backgrounds and presenting about their communities. Tons of Readers Advisory webinars. So all the publishers, usually it's School Library Journal, offers a lot of webinars of upcoming kid and teen fiction that you can get on for free. Sorry, what was the rest of the question? I took kind of notes before this. Well, we do a lot of connecting with our colleagues, whether it's through youth services meetings, county-wide, book club trainings, just to brush up on skills, story time, you name it. There's always something, but and we used to have a wide open readers advisory, but that we've talked about bringing it back, so who knows? So people would just get up and give their 2-minute spiel about a book, and so you could get straight from people could learn about different titles you can read.
Great. Laura?
The answer is yes. They're very supportive here in Dakota County library system for professional development and for training. So like every year you can put forth your proposal to see if you can go to MLA or present at MLA. JCLC was one of the things that they supported me going to. LibTech, another thing they supported. One is upcoming right now. I'm going to be taking a working with deaf patrons workshop. So I'm really excited about that one. One that I just finished was on learning from place, the Bedote workshop, where we got to go off-site, even though we're still socially distanced, where there were 2 different sites locally that they talked about the Dakota people and where the history and the background and how you can connect to sharing more about the community with the public libraries. And then they had a recent de-escalation training, which I really appreciated. So yeah, they do support us with that.
Fabulous. And so I think, there are definitely opportunities for training. We all know that. And, look for it. Be open to taking as much training and learning as much as you can. So talking about this as a role working in the public field, do all of you see this as a job that would work well for someone that's transitioning from another field entirely? And I'm not talking about like a different librarian, but like I've been an accountant my whole life and suddenly I want to be a librarian. Is this a good transitional sort of job, or even for another field of librarianship? Or would you think this is someone who should have their sights set on this job from the get-go? Tell us why or why not. Let's start with Rosalind on this one.
I was thinking a lot about this. I think like with my job, being detail oriented is really important. So your accountant might, but I mean, I think the main thing for my job is readers advisory. So maybe if you have to have that book knowledge. And a lot of what I do is very nitty gritty sort of librarianship, interlibrary loan, MinLink. So I would say with my job, you'd be better off moving into it from a library job, get into the library and then move into it from there. But knowledge of older adults, being a people person, all that kind of stuff is very important.
Thank you. Laura?
So like I did mention, I do have a colleague who did transition from school libraries, and yes, that is the library world, to here. I came from office management and a faculty recruitment university position into this, but I was immersed in the library science program for 11 plus years. So I feel like there is hope and that you could transition like that. Having worked in the library science program, there were a lot of people who, if you come with a different background, that might help you get a job. So say you had a background in economics, or you had a background in business, or background in art, you could then transition into those kind of specialized areas, or use it to how you have knowledge of that particular subject in your public library role. So I feel like also when they're hiring, they will tell you, kind of give you hints of what they're looking for in the job position, so job description. So like they might say, we're really looking for sorry, I was hoping not to have that last one.
We will reopen tomorrow at 11 a.m. Thank you for visiting the Westcott Library.
Thank you. So I was trying to say, I think that specific branches too might be looking for somebody who has more background with diversity and with outreach. And so if you've got that in your degree, in your other degree or experiences, that might help you then in getting this position over somebody who has just had, you know, only library experience and not working with this particular population. So, you know, I don't know.
Okay. Lisa?
I think absolutely somebody can move to the public library sector from a different one. You don't have to have the MLS if you want to do something different. So like my boss doesn't have his master's in library science. He didn't know a whole lot about librarianship, but he worked for Brothers, Big Sisters, and is a fabulous manager. So there are other opportunities that you can do if you are specifically looking to be a youth service librarian. However, it, of course, like I said before, you gotta like kids, teens, and families. It's just the way it is. But I think, why not? If you're willing to put in the time for the education, then if you wanted to become one, I think it would be awesome to have somebody with a different background.
Good. I think that's very helpful. I think it gives people a really good idea of what to expect. So how about advancement? Are there other positions that are a natural stepping stone from yours, or is this it? Is it what we're going to be doing forever? So how about, let's go right back to Lisa, just for fun.
There used to be a senior librarian position, but things have changed a bit at Hennepin County. There is, I get the terms confused because they're super similar. There's a service manager, which does require the MLS, that I could move to, but there's only a few spots, and it's not a lot of direct service with the public, which I really like. So that would be, I think, the next one. I don't know that I'm interested in running a building personally. I don't know that it would be a great fit for me. So for me, I kind of love what I do. I'm really happy. So
Mostly.
Yeah, you know, I like the things that, you know, there's enough change, there's enough to keep up with, and enough saying yes to all these cool other things that I can be involved with, that personally, right now, I'm good.
Okay.
But there are some, it's just not as many as there used to be that require the MLS. So maybe that opens that up for folks who don't know if they want to get that degree, to know that there are advancement possibilities that don't require it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
Yes. Rosalind.
I agree with Lisa. I've never wanted to be a branch librarian. And again, I became a librarian not because I care that, you know, it's icy on the front sidewalk. I mean, I care that it's icy on the front sidewalk, but that's not why I became a librarian. So I want to be able to work with the patrons and books. And so with my job, I love it so much that I don't really want to leave it. And there really isn't anything above that other than being a branch manager. So it's kind of like when you have the great teachers who become principals, you know, it's like, no, don't leave. So not that I'm saying I'm a great librarian. I'm just saying if you like that part of it, it's hard to leave it. So there aren't like master librarians or whatever you want to call it, where you can sort of branch out and be more of a mentor. So.
Okay, Laura.
So in this system, I think it's same for what Lisa and Rosalind, oh my goodness, Rosalind.
Just remember
Rosalind.
harder.
But basically, I think if you do want to advance, it would either be like branch manager position or into administration, or you would.
I know Rosalind, so I just wanted
Here's
to say
Karen.
hi, I miss you.
I miss you.
Now the library's closed. Sorry, so I was gonna say that there's, where are my notes? So like you could either move to another branch, like that might be a larger branch, or you could even move to another system if that's the kind of change you want. That might be a bigger system. Or, you know, we had somebody here who changed from being a higher administrative role to being a branch manager because that's just what fit for this person at that time. So, I mean, you can change around, and it does feel like here at Dakota County, they do support advancement, and they do support that you do what is right for you, for your position and for your job. And so I do like that about this place.
Great. And I think you'll all be comforted to know that our academics last week all said the same thing. They all said, sure, there's opportunities, but we love being librarians and we don't want to move up. I think it's fine with this job.
Exactly.
Okay. So tell us about the future. Let's look into the future just a little bit. What's the future for the library world in general? Is it here to stay? Are you worried that you're going to be phased out, that your particular role could be phased out? Are there already things that are happening? Share us kind of the general landscape of the library world. Rosalind.
So for me, this is kind of the golden age for books by mail, because you've got that aging baby boom generation that is booming. The boomers are booming, and also they read actual books. They're not as comfortable with ebooks, and they listen to audiobooks and they watch DVDs, you know, and my kids don't even know how to use a DVD player, I don't think. So eventually that technology or that format is going to get phased out. And so I think right now, like the next 10 years, I think is kind of the golden age for this job. And then it will probably, transition to being more about tech, you know, and at this point, I already go to senior residences and help them with their phones and their laptops and help them get on Facebook and stuff like that. So I think it'll be more like that as opposed to just mailing out materials, because audiobooks and DVDs are going to be a thing of the past at some point.
Okay.
But yes, libraries will survive.
I kind of thought that would be the opinion. Laura.
So my hope is that, yes, we will get back to, in my position, doing programming, because that is the meat of what I love to do here. Just like being a star with like having tons of programs, of course, following our program policies and following our strategic planning and all of the things that we need to follow for being part of a library system. But I love teaching classes, actually working one-on-one with people in the iLab for sewing or fabric cutting or lucid braiding. I love having the presenters come in. I love having music programs. I love getting people to come in and have book discussions. So I really don't want to lose that part of it. And I hope that we won't lose that part of it, because there's still people who see the library as a source for that and as a center for community. But I understand that we are in this total realm of change, and I cannot predict it right now. I have no idea. But even with that, this particular library, we've made plans for how to do programming. We've got like 5 different stages already planned out. We've already had meetings about this, like, what are we going to start with? We're going to start with take and makes, and then we're going to start with vendors for in-person, and then we're going to start with, staff-led programs in person, and then vendor programs in person, and then eventually open the iLab again, and then eventually have meeting space open for people to come in. We have our hopes and our dreams and our plan, but right now we're still at, 35 people coming into our building, very limited time in the building, virtual programming through vendors. So I don't know. I was also going to say that, like, with collection management, how that is changing. I just read some minutes from administration here where they were talking about Brodart is only operating at between 70 to 75% capacity when compared to pre-COVID times. So we're not getting all of the books that we used to be getting in. So we have to be very careful with our collection that we have right now. We can't just be weeding left and right. We might need these books for a bit longer. So, and part of my job is that collection management. I'm in charge of Lucky Use and new books and fiction and paperbacks and the world language collections and graphic novels. So I need to be careful about all of those resources, and I am thinking about it constantly all the time. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, I'm not worried that we're going to be phased out. I feel, well, and this is something that we've all talked about, especially when there's an economic downturn. That's when people need us the most.
Sure.
And there's always going to be people who need help, and families who need to know the next thing to read or want their kids to be involved in book clubs, and volunteer needs with teenagers. I was all set to do a May term with a high school senior when this all fell apart. We had a whole big plan, so that's still going to be a thing. I would take a high school senior for 10 days in May before they graduate, working with me full time, which is kind of scary, coming up with something to do for a teenager full time, but we got plenty to do. There's always going to be a need for connecting folks with those resources that they don't even know exist. So no, the tech thing will change, but that's where it's exciting though too. Learning, I find learning new stuff. It's a little bit scary, but I feel like the more you play with it, the better you get. So, yeah, I think we're cool. That's why I'm not a school librarian.
Okay, so let's talk a little about the pandemic. I know we've touched on this at various points through questions because it's at the moment infiltrating everything we do, but talk to us about how, any specific changes that you haven't mentioned already, but also how do you see the changes that we've been forced to make, how do you see that impacting your job in the future? What changes do you think are you going to be forced to make long term? Laura.
One thing that I don't think I mentioned, I might have when we first were chatting, but like my book group is now meeting by Zoom, and there's roughly like 13 to 15 people. It's once a month. They're older, usually Caucasian women, and they're really tight-knit, love to meet, love to talk. They even come in half an hour beforehand just to socialize. I say it's to make sure that the technology is working, which is true, but it is mostly to socialize. And then we really talk about the book for like an hour. So we used to meet in person, and they would come in, some of them even came in hours before the book group met, because they just sit in the library, or they want to talk to each other, or just sit in the room, or wander around and browse. So that has completely changed for them and for me. And now I set up Zoom, and I make sure everybody's okay with that, and I chat in the chat box, and I type in the different books, and I answer their questions. And so that is a whole different setting. And every time they ask me, Laura, are we going to meet in person next month? And I say, no, I'm sorry. It's not going to be next month. It may not be for a couple of months. Hang in there. Isn't this fun? We get to see each other. And, and they are troopers, and they love meeting, but they are just missing the in-person thing. So I do know there's that pain. Some of my homebound patrons, I ask them, hey, you want me to send you out these things? Or, you know, I sent you a card in the mail, and I put a few library resources in there in case you want to look at these books. And they're like, Laura, we're still on lockdown here. Like, I haven't seen my family. I feel like I'm in prison. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, because like my world is different from their world. So just having to be reminded about that. And it may feel like right now we're open, so people come in and they leave, but other people might not have that freedom right now. And so with the pandemic, yes, my job has changed, and yes, I'm doing things differently. And it's changed even within this little period of time, like I said before, answering the phones nonstop, or just packaging curbside pickups. And now basically it is really helping those people who are desperate to use computers, who don't have computers or who don't have internet at home, job searching, resume help, or even like, how do you use a computer? I mean, we are having people come in and they absolutely do not know how to use a computer. How do you open it up? How do you find Google? How do you find your email? So it's really dire for them. And to make sure that I step back and realize that we have people who are in this situation right now who may not just need the newest book, or or who can't get into the virtual program right now. They're desperate for concrete things. They lost their job. They're looking for housing. So I feel like one of the ways that it changed for helping and connect to these seniors is that we couldn't go see them. They can't come in. So we decided to do handmade cards, and I dropped them off at 2 of my senior care centers, and I collaborated with the volunteers on one of this project where they helped make the cards too. And I did a little video for them so they could see what sort of thing are we looking for. And I was like, you know, something cheery, something to let them know they're missed, that we're thinking about them, to make them laugh. And they drew the cutest pictures, and some of them wrote jokes. And so it was just like the best project during this time to connect with my community that I might not have thought about before. So I did love that, but we're still missing each other.
Great, thank you. Lisa.
What's changed for me? Well, I was working at home full-time throughout the summer, and still doing book clubs. And I usually run a Harry Potter camp every summer, which is a ton of work. So I changed it to escape rooms. So that was some learning, new software, and I got really good at it. And I think I made it too hard, because by the 7th escape room, hardly anybody's finished it, but whatever. So I really spent a lot of time working on that. It was kind of fun because I saw different kids in my book clubs. So I think that might be something that continues. I prefer, of course, in person, because then you can do these super fun activities. But then it opens it up to kids who can't get to the library. Kids and teens who can't get to the library to participate in things. Maybe they don't have a ride, or they don't live close by, or who knows what. And I actually asked the teens in my book club if they were interested in keeping a book club going, because what else are they gonna do? I don't know that they really have a lot of, usually they're overscheduled. And now they're not, and they're home. So I probably will continue, because normally during the school year, at least with my library, they have so many other things going on that they don't come to extra programming unless it's like a super fantastic opportunity. So I have a feeling that those might continue. Visiting organizations, we've done a little bit, but it's mostly been outside. So going to talk to kids about, what they can do while, they're home with the library's website. And so we went to a couple places. One was indoors, but it was at the Y, and they had lots of space. So that's been a thing that I really have missed, is that outreach component and engaging with the families and going to visit these apartment buildings. We finally got an in with these apartment buildings that are really close to the library, and then everything shut down, so it's kind of stalled. So I'm hoping that the information that we've sent to the managers of those buildings has gotten to the families there. It's so hard to know. And how do you balance persistence with being a pain and contacting people too much? Like, I have an organization that I go to monthly. It's for youth who are formerly homeless, and I have basically a set day. I go there once a month for 2 hours, and I talk with youth and get them hooked up with cards or waive fines or whatever it is, and they are completely locked down. So I keep emailing like once a month the staff that works there, saying, hey, can I drop off some books? Just leave them in a box or something. And I think that they're just so overwhelmed with the amount of things that they have to do for the residents, because of everything that's been happening, from the George Floyd murder to COVID and unrest and racial tensions. I think that the staff has so much on their plate that they don't really have time. Like, oh yeah, the library, yeah, whatever, we'll get to you later. Where I'm like, but I can help you. I can give you these things. I can tell me what you want, and I will see what I can do to hook you up with those resources. So that's been a big change, and it's really sad. So that was
Yeah,
really
it is
long.
very
Sorry.
Yeah,
But it breaks my heart sometimes that I can't do those things that make more of a difference. But I will.
I have faith.
Getting in there.
What's weird about my job is, I was thinking about this, because of all the public service jobs in Anoka County, I think I'm the only one doing more of what I did before than anybody else. It's so, I mean, it's a super busy job, and you're constantly, you're just constantly in triage mode. Like, oh, I got to get these out for George, and that's right. And I have too many Josephines, and I got to keep my Jans, straight. And it's constantly like that. But right now, those people are reading so fast because they're so isolated, and they're always talking about lockdown. And so I have people who read 10 books at a time, and 30 books a month. They read a book a day. And so keeping up with them is difficult, and when they have other stuff to do. But when they don't, it's just really busy. So I think what's weird is my job is the same, only more so. And thank God that we can mail books to people. We didn't mail books for a while because everything shut down, but we figured out quarantining, and then we realized that books by mail is kind of quarantined by nature, just because it takes them a while to get there. So that has definitely, it's just been an eye-opener how much of a lifeline books by mail is. And the other thing that's interesting that I never really thought about is people I help are homebound by nature. And so some of the programming that we're doing, virtual programming, I can actually publicize for them and they can go to it, which they couldn't do before. So that's a sort of a weird aspect that I hadn't thought of. But the other thing is, if somebody would ask me last year at this time, do you think you can do your job from home? I would have thought they were insane, first of all, and why are you asking? And that's never going to happen. And I figured out how to do it virtually, and I've printing a lot less paper, so it's good for the environment. It does make you open up, like what Lisa said. You really do have to sort of brainstorm, and I've had a couple of nights where I woke up at 3 in the morning and went, oh yeah, that's what I could do. And so just things that you can figure out, ways to work around. And so in that way, it's good. But would I prefer just be working at the library and never have thought I could do this? Yes. But, you know, making lemonade, so.
That is amazing. Thank you all. So I'm assuming that you had some idea what you were getting into when you all accepted jobs in the library world. So tell me something that surprised you once you got these jobs and you'd been at it for a while. Something that's surprising about your job. Lisa.
Oh, man. Something that still surprises me, and it shouldn't, but is how many people still don't know what the library is all about. And especially people who are more affluent and maybe haven't visited the library in a while, are kind of dismissive, as we've seen. So that was surprising to me. And when I first got the youth services job, my predecessor said to me, you know, this is a big job. And I'm like, it's kids and teens. It is a big job. And that was when I was at a smaller library, so I was the only YS person. It is a big job that is never the same. Even though you might plan the same thing every year, it's never the same. And yeah, I knew I'd love it, but I didn't really know. You know, this was what my 8th grade test was right. So I guess the ignorance of what we do and what we provide surprises me all the time.
I think that's a great answer. Laura, what surprises you?
I did mention it before, but for me, I didn't think it would be this much fun, the humor and the camaraderie with my coworkers. I am grateful every day that we support each other, that we're so strong. We just all did the Strengths Finder, and a lot of us, our top one is the one that's like the go-getter. And we were like, ooh, that's going to be difficult, that we're always wanting to be like the alpha to like get things done and do the best at our job. But I love that. And we all love that about each other, because we want it to be done well. And we want to have the best thing out there for our patrons and for our library. So we really, we strive to do that, and we push each other to do that. And we do it with laughter. So I love that part of it. And I know that's not more like the patron side of it, that's more like the back end side of it, but
that's okay.
Yeah, it makes this really stressful time and this really high workload bearable, because you know that you've got each other's backs and you can talk to each other, you can tell stories and make it work. So I love that.
That's great. Rosalind?
For me, like I said, I started so long ago that when I started working in a public library at the reference desk, you would solve bar bets. People would call you up that were drunk and wanted to know who starred in some movie, and you were their only resource. I mean, seriously, there wasn't anything else, and I really loved that. You know, I loved the Wild West of public librarianship back then. And every single person who came into the library who wanted to request a book had to go through you. There wasn't it wasn't automated. I mean, I go back to card catalog days, you know, so now I guess what surprises me is it's the people that you're helping in the library are people who don't have a computer and who don't have computer skills. You're not helping the people who know how to use Google. You're not helping the people who know how to, I mean, you know, if you know, everybody has their phone with you. Do you want to know who stars in a movie? You just look it up. You know, it's just not something that, it's something that changed that I didn't predict. And I think you really have to have a love of that technology. And I'm not sure that I always do. It's hard because you're not helping, you know, like one time a kid came in who wanted he wanted a book, and we didn't have it on the shelf, but it was available as an ebook. And before I turned around, he had the app loaded and the book open, practically redone with the first page, you know? And that is so mind-blowingly great right now when you have somebody who can just do that. And that is just something you have to just be prepared for, the patience level for the people that you help, because they're not going to be people who know how to use computers. They're going to be people who don't have them at home, because if they do, they would be at home. So that's something I didn't think about.
Can I add to that?
Of course you can.
I loved, Rosalind, that you said like it's like wild, that it used to be like the Wild West, because I feel like it still is right now. I feel like you get these weird questions coming at you. Like today, I spent 26 minutes with somebody trying to get Cloud Library and get the app on his phone, on his device, and just like, where do you find it? How do you take it off of your device? And just finding it from the library website. And it was like, it was really, really hard. But at the end, he was like, what is your first name? And I was like, Laura. And he's like, Laura, thank you so much for your patience and for taking the time to work with me on this. And I was like, aw. So I was like, no problem. And my very first reference question at the desk with the phone was some guy who was going to be painting a water tower, and he needed to find an image for a brown pelican. And I was like, yes, I love this question. Yes, I can help you find this. Yes, and it's so easy. And he just didn't know how to do it. Like, he wanted me to walk over and find books. And I was like, no, no, no. Let's just go online, because you can find the best one. You'll find it looking this way, just like you wanted. So it was just... I mean,
and that to me, it's the brown pelican questions that I miss, because it's so much. I think when I'm at the children's desk, it's so much more reader's advisory, which I love. And you have like 3 seconds to come up with it, because it's a super busy summer day and they want to know, I love Diary of a Wimpy Kid, what do I read? But on the adult side, I sort of miss just the wide variety, because I feel like now it's almost all tech. It's almost all ebook questions. And then of course there's tax form questions, but it's about helping you with the printer, helping you with your computer. And so you have to have that skill set and really enjoy it. And I guess I just sort of sometimes reminisce about settling bar bets, you know?
I just have to say, I just started working the phones from home, the reference ones, and I am getting those crazy questions, and I am loving it. It is super fun. I talked to like 10 different people today, and they were all nice. I'm like, woo! It was great.
All right. So we only have a couple of questions left, believe it or not. So this one, I would like an anecdote from your job. So anything, it can be a good one, a bad one, a funny one, scary, whatever you come up with. So anything you've got, Laura.
Okay, So my favorite pandemic story is when this older gentleman called on the phone and he wanted to know, could he come into the library? And he's like, and I just heard on the news that there was this beach and people were getting fined for not wearing their masks. And I said, well, yes, you do have to wear your mask if you come into the library. And he's like, well, they were getting fined for not wearing their masks, but they weren't wearing clothes. And I said, yes. And I said, well, sir, you will have to wear your clothes and the mask when you come into the library. And he said, just for you. And I could tell it was an older gentleman, but he just made my day.
Thank heavens.
Yes.
Rosalind?
Well, there's so many stories, but one of my favorites is I had a woman in her 90s, of course. Her name is Grace. Grace has since died, but she would always request these very esoteric books or more just books that I often had to get through interlibrary loan. And I never knew that she needed them in large print, and thankfully, because most of them weren't available in large print. So one day she called me up and wanted me to send her the Gettysburg Address with large font, because she wanted, and I said, okay, so I sent it to her. I thought it was pretty big font. And she called me back and said it wasn't big enough font. And I said, well, I'm curious, how do you read the books that I send you? Because they're in regular, standard print. And she said, well, I love reading so much that I use my magnifying glass and I word by word, letter by letter, so that I can read this book. But just once, I want to be able to read it and be able to read it easily. So I said, well, how big do you think you need the font to be in order to do that? And she told me. And so, Olivia, do you have that?
Oh, yeah.
So the Gettysburg Address is only a paragraph, but I changed the font, and I sent it to her, 11 by 17 paper, 11 pages. And the font, I think, was over.
So here's one of them that you shared.
So that's the Gettysburg Address. So
Yes.
it was 11 by 17, and I mailed it to her. And then I thought, whatever. A week later, she called me back and recited it over the phone.
Oh.
She could read it. And then the next year, she told me, okay, my vision is worse. So I need to do Portia's speech. She was going to recite that at a conference. So Portia's speech from the Merchant of Venice. So now she needed it to be about 2 inches. So that was that. So I mailed that to her. And again, it was amazing. And she could read it. I mean, obviously you couldn't do much more than a paragraph or a page, but that to me was just wow. I mean, when she called me back and recited the Gettysburg Address, because she could really read it. And as someone who fears not being able to read at some point because of vision, I'm just so happy to be able to help with that.
That's an amazing story. Thank you,
Nice.
Rosalind. And Lisa.
Well, I'll have a slightly pandemic story. So I connected with a special education teacher at the Richfield schools who wanted her students to come volunteer at the library. So we had a weekly, it was like every other, so one group would come on week 1 and then the next group would come on week 2 for like an hour and a half every Wednesday. And then everything shut down. And they were delightful. Really, sorry about the dog. They're just darling, and I love them to pieces. But then everything closed down, and I was still connecting with them, and they had a virtual job interview practice, and they asked me if I wanted to be an interviewer. So I got to kind of see them, some of them, virtually, and talk to them and practice for job interviews. He's kind of a squeaky toy and I can't read them. So it was important because I was helping them prep for this potential job. I don't know whatever happened to them. Because then, summer came, so I have to reconnect with the teacher. But it was just, they were just so sweet and so excited to try this thing. Some of them were super nervous and didn't even show up, so we'd have to reschedule. So I'm like, that's fine. He just had dinner, so that's the kind of connection that is just fantastic, is that these kids trusted me because they knew me. Well, except for the ones that were too scared to connect, but we did eventually do it. And that the teacher trusted me too, to be that person, to show up and do what's asked and talk with these kids. It was really lovely. And I miss them terribly.
Aww. That is amazing. Okay, tell me something that you did not learn in library school, but you sure wish you had. Lisa.
I don't think I did anything about collection management in school. Granted, I have a horrible memory, but honestly, I learned about weeding when I was subbing. On one of the times at Southdale, there was a delightful librarian there, Angie Norell, who would bring me a book and we would go over the book and she'd be like, okay, what do you think of this one? Why would you get rid of it? What would make you keep it? So thankfully I had a lot of people that were looking out for me, but like, how do you know when to get rid of a book? I mean, you have to be really well versed in it. And we did a little bit about patrons in school, but so collection management and patron management would be two things that I wish I had learned.
Strong answers both. Laura.
Mine is the patron one, like especially working with challenging patrons, like the social work side of it. Like if somebody's having an issue, but you can't quite tell why. I had a guy walk by and I thought he was talking to me and he was not talking to me. He was talking to his invisible army person next to him, which I did not know. So then I was like, okay. So just trying to figure out what's happening in the situation and how do you adjust for that situation with patrons, which I think sometimes you can't do until you just do it. You're in that situation and then you figure out how do you do it with kindness and with compassion, and don't put yourself into it, because you don't need to be emotionally involved in that situation, but you can still interact with somebody and help them. So.
Great. Rosalind?
I've said this many times to coworkers. I think everybody in library school should go work at FedEx Kinko's for about 6 months. And then once they realize if they know how to use the printers and the copiers, then they're golden. Because seriously, so much of reference is printers, copiers. And if you feel comfortable with that, or helping people, with their Word document or whatever. I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous. Okay, 6 months might be long, but at least a week, really understand that that's going to be part of it. It's not, a lot of discussions about intellectual freedom every day. It's very nitty gritty, and if you can embrace that, you're set. So.
I second that. There's people who come in, this is really important. It's not funny. It's so serious, because people come up and it's like, this is money that they're putting into this machine, and where's their copy job? And
Right.
It's so important to them, or they're making copies of something and they need your help. And if you don't know how to use that machine and help them so that they don't get frustrated even more, you're not doing a good job helping them.
And all the magical things, enlarging, duplicating, everything. So.
And being patient with each one, even though it's the 10th person that day that has had the same thing.
Yes.
It's treating it like it's brand new.
Yes.
Those are all great points. Okay. To our attendees, is there anything else that you want to know? We're just about done here. Are there any final questions that you guys would like to ask? And I'll give you a moment, because I know if you do have one, you'll have to type it in the chat. So take a moment, and I'll have our panelists think, is there anything that you want to share that I didn't ask you?
Probably.
Well, if you've got something, now's the time.
I think what Laura said about humor is really, really important. Sense of humor. Because there's so many things that are just funny, and if you don't have a sense of humor about it, you might just cry. So I think just keeping that in mind and being able to see the funny side really, really helps. So
I have a story where the circ staff was sitting over there, and I could vaguely hear that she was helping somebody, and I could tell that she was uncomfortable, and the lady was asking her for this book, and circ was like, you need to go over there. And I was like, uh-oh. So the person came over to me and literally was like, I don't remember the title. I don't remember the author. It was a hot pink cover. There was a bride on the cover. It was maybe 7 years ago on your new shelf. And maybe the author's name starts with a P. And I was like, are you kidding me? In my head, like, she thought I would know it. And I was like, okay, I don't know this one, but let's look for it. So we're looking through it, and I'm Googling covers because I'm like, I don't remember a hot pink cover with the bride on it. And that's not my area of reading anyway. So I'm trying to find it. And then I'm thinking backwards, and I'm like, you said you returned it late. Did you maybe have a late fee on it? And that was how I went backwards. I went into the system. We looked at her late fees. I read off titles that I thought from 2013 that maybe this might be a title about a runaway bride. And we found it. I could not believe it. We found the title, and she was like, wow, you're the best detective. And I was like, that was an amazing miracle, lady, okay? Like, that does not usually happen.
I love those.
I do too.
I love that. I know there are patrons that want me just to stop looking, and I'm like, no, I'm no, I have to go home. No, I'll call you. Yes, those are. I love that. That's what I mean. Yes, that's what I love. I did that when I was home sick one time. New York Public Library had a bunch of unanswered questions where people were trying to find long lost titles.
Oh.
I found like 5. So
Wow, yay!
those are wonderful things.
Yes, because you know that somebody really, really wanted to know that. It's like dying in them.
I know. You just have to keep digging around. Oh, yep. I know. And I enjoy the massacred titles too. The with the people who think they've got it, and you're just like,
Yes.
Those are always fun.
My favorite one is a 7-year-old. Oh, I know, she was probably like 4, who came up and wanted the 7 Whites and the Dorks. And I said, I did not laugh. I just said, did you want the Disney version? And she said yes. And so we got that for her.
I just love not knowing what's going to come in the door next.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I try really hard to do is to treat each person, no matter what their request or just them walking the library, with, respect and cheerfulness. Like, I'm glad you're here, because not everybody does it, especially with the teenagers when they come in. I need them to know that I saw them. Like, hey, tell me the worst thing about your day. Okay, now tell me the best thing. The fact that somebody else in the world gives a rip is, I think, really important. That, that weird white lady isn't maybe so bad after all. Really, that's kind of my goal, is I want them to know that they can ask me questions and it's all good.
Yeah.
And eventually they do. And then they graduate and I gotta start all over again.
And I like that note. That's a good, good way to end it, I think. So I'm not seeing any more questions from the chat.
Nothing.
Nothing. No final questions. Apparently
We're
they're
amazing.
So I will just say to the attendees, I will be sending out that evaluation to you, and please, keep an eye out for future events. They're going to come up every other Wednesday. To our panelists, thank you so much. You guys were terrific. You were a lot of fun. I feel like you've been sitting here talking for a long time, so it's been a lot of fun for me. I hope that our attendees enjoyed it. Lynn says thank you in the comments, in the chat, so she said it was very informative. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to do this.
Sure. If they have any other questions in the future, they know where to find us.
Yep.
They know where to find you. That's right.
Stop on by if you can. Come in if you want to.
And look at that, we'll get you out to about 10 minutes early. So you got a little 10 bonus minutes in your day. Isn't that great?
Yay.
Okay, well, thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa.